This is part 2 of the My Hero Academia rewrite. If you have not seen part 1, it will obviously be important, so go and watch it. But if you have, let's get into today's video. After summer break, the dorms will be implemented, so Aizawa and Vlad King make their rounds, convincing all of 1A and 1B's parents to let their students return. Inko would still have her doubts, talking about how Izuku's had to do physical therapy exercises on his injured arm since he joined UA. That would be bad enough, but the constant villain attacks has her even more worried. Izuku still gets a note from Kota, which he shows his mother. Aizawa continues this thread, saying how in the past year he can already tell Izuku has grown a lot. That being said, his tendency to be self-destructive for others still exists. He's seen students with that same attitude throw their lives away when they had such promising careers ahead of them. He pauses slightly, as we briefly see he's thinking of Shirakumo. Continuing on, he says that it's his duty to make sure that never happens again. If Izuku is allowed to return to UA, nothing bad will happen to him so long as a race ahead is standing. This would be enough to make Inko agree. With the dorms being implemented, all of the students meet up after summer break, so maybe some characters could have makeovers. This is even where I'd swap Shoto's costume to his canon one, as he just abruptly drops his season 1 outfit out of nowhere. That outfit is symbolic of him being tethered to only ice, so now that he's more comfortable with fire, his outfit reflects that. They still have the rune competition, but Sato doesn't win here, as he hasn't cooked for the class yet. Todoroki probably just wins it, because of how he literally changed the room layout on his own. Training would begin on super moves in preparation for the provisional license exam. With All Might dead, Izuku has more pressure on himself to fill those boots, so he'd be trying to replicate him even more of his fists, and even the way he moves. Bakugo would take note of that. In between training, we get more bonding moments in the dorms as the class decides to do a cooking challenge. They'll randomly pick people in teams of 2 to work together to make the best dish in the class. The only important teams would be Uraraka and Shoto, Bakugo and Aoyama, and Izuku and Sato. Obviously other teams would be there, but they aren't as important right now. I put Uraraka and Shoto together because they rarely interact, so it gives them time to work together to cook. Bakugo would be frustrated by Aoyama's attitude, swearing that he wasn't that annoying last year. Whoa, it's just like I just alluded to something that'll be important later with something really basic. That's crazy, that's good storytelling. As for Izuku and Sato, I'd have it revealed that Sato is self-conscious about his cooking. His quirk revolves around sugar consumption, but he learned to cook all kinds of food. He even wanted to be a chef at one point, but his parents always preferred his brother's cooking, so he decided he could help people with his strength instead. Izuku tries Sato's food, and is blown away with how amazing it is, over-analyzing the textures and taste in typical Izuku fashion. He tells Sato that his food is amazing, giving him some speech that inspires him to let the others try it. They do, and all also love it, making Sato the winner of the challenge. I'm trying to give Izuku moments with the class, so in the far future they can all relate back to a moment when Izuku helped them, or just when they bonded. It also fleshes out Sato a bit, cause he is basically filler, let's be honest. During this we get Shoji revealing what's under his mask while he eats, with this going the same as the flashback did, except the audience just don't see his mouth. It's either always off screen or covered in shadow. This sets up the mutant stuff as a plot point that will be explored, and gives Shoji more time to address the issue before he's put in a central role of it. For the actual exams, I gotta be honest, I don't think anything has to change. I quite like this arc, and as the first arc of the second year it works very well. All the character moments work for the arc set up for them, so while this arc is mainly set up, I think it's still good set up. The only change I'd really make is that Uraraka doesn't need to be told by Yaoyorozu about saving people. In fact here, she has an affinity for it, as she's been around construction sites, so she knows to move the rubble first. At the dorms that night, Bakugo would be staring at Izuku across the room. We'd get a flashback during the break from school of Bakugo visiting the hospital, where we see Genis going through physical training. All for One's attack took out one of his lungs, as well as causing damage to his spine. He almost lost the ability to walk, but thankfully with training, he'll be back in no time. He thanks Bakugo for coming to see him, asking him what's wrong. It's clear by the look on his eyes that something is troubling him, so just spill it. Bakugo struggles slightly before speaking. This guy. Someone I went to school with before UA. I found out he was lying to me about something big, and it's making me so angry. When we go back to school, I swear I'll— Katsuki, what did I teach you? Bakugo pauses, almost losing his temper. Genis' training was to teach him to act rationally, not lose it. Bakugo then approaches Izuku in the present, telling him they need to talk, leading to their fight. During Bakugo vs Izuku, we'd have that pretty much go the same, except obviously again, All Might isn't there. So Izuku and Bakugo would have their heart-to-heart during this fight, with Katsuki breaking down about how he was the one who killed All Might. Izuku wouldn't know what to say, but he hears a voice tell him to reach out to him. So he comforts him, and tells him that they're all at fault for putting the weight on All Might's shoulders. It's clear that he isn't confident though. Bakugo and Izuku develop their rivalry here, with Bakugo telling Izuku he'll inevitably surpass him, and he also learns about One for All. When they're cleaning up the next day, Bakugo tells Izuku that he doesn't have to be All Might. Him fighting just like All Might just makes him easy to predict. This would be the inspiration for Izuku to create Shoot Style, as he recognizes the desire to become his own symbol of peace. The overall arc starts the same, as it's pretty solid. With All for One dead, it gives Overhaul more reason to want to take over the absence he left. And with All Might dead, it gives Night Eye more reason to have disdain for Izuku. So all this goes the same, except for one key difference. Izuku would be hearing voices a bit more often. He can't communicate, but he hears phrases vividly. So he'd ask Night Eye if All Might ever heard voices, which only gets Night Eye to look at him like he's crazy. It also means that the big three are only 1 year older than our main characters here. The arc plays out pretty much beat for beat, but with a few smaller changes. For one, during Mirio and Izuku's patrols, we get a conversation about how Mirio is so strong, with him explaining how he focuses on predicting. This is something Izuku notes, as while he can sometimes predict his opponents, Mirio seems to be nearing the levels of precognition. With his analytical mind, he could easily master that. Night Eye's quirk being actual future sight is a bit world-breaking, so I'm just going to tweak how it functions. His mind plays out scenarios, showing him different futures. It works on the information he already has at his disposal, meaning the further in the future he looks, the less reliable it is. It doesn't necessarily change anything in the arc, but I think this makes more sense than his canon quirk. I also think that Rocklock should die here from Toga's stabbing. It works because it means Uraraka has to help the injured Rocklock to the ambulance, where he'll still pass away as a result of her main antagonist. It serves to have a death in this arc because I'm not having Night Eye die here. Instead, he'll be badly injured and in a coma, with the doctors not sure if or when he'll wake up. I mean, obviously though he will, because I'm making him live. I'm not just going to pass over that for no reason. Elsewhere, Gran Torino would be with Sukauchi, some police and Edshot. They have to miss out on the Yakuza raid, but Gran Torino assures them this is more important. If Sukauchi's tip is true, Kurogiri was spotted alone. Whatever reason he's separated for now doesn't matter. If they can capture him, they'll cripple the League's movements. Curiously, Edshot asked the old-timer about fighting All for One back in the day. Was this guy a part of his old crew? Gran Torino briefly flashes back, remembering the people who he had to fight all those years ago. To us as the audience, we see silhouettes of a lanky man wearing a hood, as well as a hulking figure stood either side of All for One. Gran Torino tells Edshot that Kurogiri is new. Out of all of All for One's allies, they captured most of them. The others haven't been active since his original defeat by All Might. Sukauchi theorizes that maybe Kurogiri is looking for them now to bolster the League's forces, with that increasing the urgency to find him. Meanwhile, Kurogiri would be in a warehouse that is seemingly run down, abandoned. He walks through it, looking for something in particular through all the dusty furniture. As he moves though, a meow draws his attention. A black cat jumps down, meowing at the villain, causing his sight to linger on the creature. His thoughts are quickly brought back to the task at hand as a speaker blares out, telling him he needs to focus. Stick to the plan. This next step all hinges on retrieving Giganto's location that the Master hid here. Curiously, Kurogiri asks why the figure over the phone doesn't possess this information himself, but then retorting that the Master was always cautious. If he had been captured, his plan wouldn't immediately crumble. He was always prepared. Kurogiri eventually finds a comic book with graffiti all over it. The title of it was The Adventures of the Mighty Supreme Man, but the last part was scribbled out, replaced with Mighty Demon Lord. It was childish, but this is exactly what he was looking for. Now he can return to Shigaraki and help him continue. Before he can open a warp gate, his body is hit all over from a tiny individual. Edshot unfolds himself, looking at the paralyzed Kurogiri. This trick worked so well last time for them. Gran Torino moves in, along with the police force behind him, telling Kurogiri that he's under arrest. Over his radio, the speakers tell Kurogiri that he can't return back to the League. If they follow him through the warp gate, they'll stop their whole plans. He needs to lose them first. To the shock of the heroes, Kurogiri manages to move, mentioning how that trick won't work again. The room fills with the purple smoke, as he states that the heroes won't get in their way. He'll protect Shigaraki no matter the cost. Edshot remains confused at how this technique didn't work, stating how that isn't possible. Multiple warp gates begin to open up, sucking up furniture while also throwing it at the several people there. Thankfully, both Gran Torino and Edshot are quick, protecting everyone from the attacks. Some of them get sucked up through portals though, their whereabouts unknown. Kurogiri tries to step through a portal of his own, which Gran Torino notices, zipping through the portal along with Edshot. As the smoke leaves the room, it's completely cleared out, leaving Sukauchi alone. The only other thing in there is a black cat, with not a hair touched on it. Was Kurogiri protecting it? The trio all arrive on a hillside, as Kurogiri attempts to jump again. he needs to lose them. Edgeshot asks Gran Torino to support him. He needs to test a theory. While confused, the old-timer agrees, with the duo both moving at the warper quickly. Gran Torino would be working as hard as his old body would let him, landing combo attacks while ignoring the lack of breath his body can draw. If he can keep up this assault, Kurogiri won't be able to create a warp gate to escape. Meanwhile, Edgeshot would have entered Kurogiri's body. Moving through, he thinks to himself how Kurogiri could stay awake. His technique works by quickly severing the nerve endings, causing the body to be paralyzed and pass out from the shock. It's never too bad as the cuts are so small they'll heal in a few hours, but it should be almost impossible to withstand. What's more, he wasn't even stunned this time. After an inspection, it looks like the cuts he put there back in the bar haven't even healed. It's as if his body wasn't working. Continuing on this thread, he heads to Kurogiri's heart and lungs to see them also not working. There's not even signs that they have been for a while. From the looks of it, Kurogiri is dead. Exiting his body, Edgeshot tells Gran Torino this news, which also shocks the old man. It isn't too far-fetched, judging by what they know about Nomu. Maybe Kurogiri is just another case of those. Kurogiri remains quiet though, as if he's processing what he's been told. Was he a Nomu? No, but he has memories. He remembers his first memory, being greeted by All For One. He tells Kurogiri that he saved him from death because he has a great purpose. He's a natural protector, so please protect his son, Tomura Shigaraki. As Kurogiri tries to remember further back, his body writhes in pain. It spasms hard as his speech glitches, struggling to get a word out. The memory of a cat on an underpass enters his head, causing him to completely shut down. Both heroes are very confused as they question what the hell happened. They fail to notice a tiny explosion on Kurogiri's ear as the communication device self-destructs. The figure in darkness says that it was only a matter of time before Kurogiri broke, though he's shocked the catalyst didn't occur sooner. He was of course one of the first, so he can't blame himself for the design flaw. Not to worry though. He still served his purpose. In the warp gate attack, he perfectly managed to teleport away the comic to the leak's location. Spinner and Compress begin flicking through the books, laughing at the scribbles before finding coordinates on them. This must have been what Kurogiri went to get, but where is he? Shigaraki realizes what this means, saddening him. He says that Kurogiri has been captured. Let's just hope what he got for them was useful. Afterward, time passes, where we see a meeting between all the teachers at UA. Once more, Vlad King will be stressing about how they can't miss out on the sports festival. He understands pushing it back in All Might's wake, but it is unfair to the kids not to let them participate. Opposing this, Aizawa states that it's not just All Might's death. These kids have had too many close calls with villains. Promoting more combat for them will only further alert the villains of their skills. It isn't safe for them if they get attacked in the future. That's not to mention the fact they have yet to locate them all, though they seem to be dormant this year. Both teachers have different views due to the different experiences of their classes, which Nezu takes into account. Trying to strike a balance, Cementos asks about setting up a private showing to only the pro heroes. Contact anyone on the agency list discreetly and let them watch via a private stream. Nezu agrees with that idea being the safest, though it will take some time to set that up. This annoys Vlad King, as he asks what the teachers are meant to do in the meantime. Without preparing for the sports festival, as well as all the safety measures, they've had to move up the regular teaching curriculum drastically. With the way they're going, they won't have anything left to teach the kids soon. The mouse asks if this is how everyone feels, with President Mike seconding this. He then gets a flashback to trying to teach English, spending an hour saying the word Mike over and over. Cringe naturally fills his body. Some of the other teachers also back up this notion, making Nezu realize they'll need something to fill up the void. It'll take a lot of brainstorming and planning, and he's got the perfect idea. Wow, that was quick. This past year has been stressful on everyone, so why not have some fun? They're already passing their grades, and if they aren't, they have some more time to prepare. They're going to throw a festival for the residents of UA. The teachers will return back to their classes where they disclose this to their kids, where we get the decision from 2A to do a concert. Also, Izuku would still form his friendship with Aoyama, where he'd also note how different Aoyama seems this year. Bakugo and Sho would also still have to get their licenses, so they'd be doing that training. I also think it'd be funny if Monomo was there as well. He'd brag out 2B is yet again superior due to only having one member fail, before quickly being reminded that it was him. He doesn't change this part, but maybe he'd take note of Bakugo talking to the kids. During this time, we see Izuku training by himself in the nearby woods of UA. He'd not only be refining shoot style, but also trying to increase his prediction skills, though it's a lot harder to do so without an opponent. The best he can do is write down everything that happened in his previous villain fights to build his database, and go from there. He also wants to further his Air Force training, but the percentage needed to do so makes his body lock up. It's too difficult to maintain it at a level needed for an extended period of time. How did All Might manage? As he's thinking, a girl screaming rapidly gets louder and louder as he gets hit by something. Looking up, we get the same Hatsume gag where she thanks Izuku for catching her. She stands up, wearing a weird type of armor, which Izuku thinks looks really cool. Immediately, she frantically goes through what it can do and the components in it, with Izuku thinking that that's how people must see him. When she finishes, she asks what he's doing out here, with him explaining his training. He just can't crack it. Unfortunately, Hatsume isn't big on combat, so she can't give him any advice. Besides, she needs to fine-tune the power output on her baby if she wants to equalize it. A bit more in the arms and a bit less in the legs. Yeah, that should do. These words make something click with Izuku, as he shouts that she's a genius. He wasn't using 100% at all times. With this idea in mind, Izuku would learn to raise his power on impact. Mei would watch Izuku from her workshop as he trains outside, unleashing a wind blast from his hands. He tries to aim it, but it just goes everywhere. Clearly he needs some refinement. So the next day, Izuku is met by Mei, who gives him the Air Force gauntlets. He needs some help with his gear, and she's the best at that. Izuku is very grateful, but he can't accept this. All Might never use support gear. Before he says that though, Bakugo's words that he is an All Might reverb through his head. It's a lesson that's hard learned, but slowly but surely he's carving that path. So he accepts the gloves, thanking her for it. This is just a remix to how Izuku gets his Air Force powers, as obviously All Might helped him with this in canon, but this again helps Izuku grow without a master teaching him. He barely got a nudge in the right direction and went running to break his limits. As for the rest of the arc, it is arguably one of the most important parts of the story for the characters. It lets the class all bond more and increase their teamwork, which obviously comes into play later. The encounter with Gentle also helps Izuku begin to want to save villains instead of just stopping them, which is crucial for this arc. The only thing I change is have a small scene of Izuku envisioning a move Stain did that Gentle is also doing, allowing him to make the best decision to avoid it. I really want to stress the precognition thing as becoming part of Izuku's arsenal. Plus it helps teach the kids that heroes can save people in other ways, as they can let Eri finally smile. As for the Pro Heroes arc, I'd like to make it longer just a bit to further build up Hawks and Endeavor's dynamic. Nothing crazy, but we can have Hawks take Endeavor to a warehouse of crooks who have been notorious in an area. Hawks would also continue being annoying during the fights, as he fanboys out, mentioning Endeavor's several fights. We even see brief flashbacks of Endeavor fighting people, one of which is an underground fighter. That's like foreshadowing. Endeavor would begin to lament that Hawks' info was useful, with him telling Endeavor he has even more. He heard that this arms deal was set up by the League. Judging from rumors, they must be building up to create Nomu. We then get the high-end fight like normal, where it's not blatantly said, but it's heavily implied to be one of Endeavor's previous villains. It's also revealed Darby told Hawks to go there in order to fan out the League's competition a bit. One small change I'd make is not showing the flashback of Hawks as a kid, as there's a better moment to move that to. But yeah, this arc doesn't change much. It just gets a little more. But with that, we're going to save joint training for the next parts, as we're leaving it here for today. If you're enjoying the rewrite, hit the like button, subscribe and share it, as it really helps out the channel, especially because this one is new. Just like I said before, the first chunk of the story is probably going to be a lot more glossed over, as not much needs to change, but as you can see in comparison to part 1, there was the whole like Kurogiri thing, and the setup for the future, so we get more changes, and joint training, or the second UA Sports Festival, is going to be 3 parts worth. They're all going to be around the same length, so it should be like an hour's worth of content. So if you're hyped for that, again, subscribe, like, all that, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.